I'm 27. I live alone in a one-bedroom house off Farm Road 1612, about 40 minutes south of San Angelo, Texas. It's the kind of place that sounds peaceful until you're actually there at 2 in the morning and realize just how quiet it gets. No neighbors for a quarter mile in any direction. No streetlights. When the sun goes down, the dark out here is total. The kind of dark where you can stand on your porch and not see your own hand in front of your face. I moved out here in November of 2024. I'd been living in Lubbock before that, sharing a duplex with a buddy from work. When my grandpa passed, he left me this house and about 9 acres of scrubland. I didn't even think twice. The rent was killing me, and free is free. I packed my truck, drove down on a Saturday, and had everything moved in by that Sunday night. The house itself is nothing special. White siding, tin roof, 2 windows facing the road, and 2 facing the back pasture. There's a small kitchen, a living room, 1 bedroom, and a bathroom with a shower that takes about 4 minutes to get hot. The bedroom is at the back of the house. The window in there looks out toward this old cedar tree that's been dead for years. Bare branches, no leaves, just gray wood reaching up into the sky. I remember thinking it looked kind of ugly when I moved in, but I never got around to having it cut down. The first couple months were fine. Better than fine. I liked the quiet. I liked being able to walk outside and take a leak off the porch without worrying about anyone seeing me. I liked cooking my own food and watching whatever I wanted, and falling asleep on the couch without someone banging around in the kitchen at 6 a.m. It felt like my own little corner of the world. I started my new job at the pipeline company in early January. It was field work, long hours, heavy lifting, driving out to remote sites in the middle of nowhere. By the time I got home most nights, I was done. Physically and mentally just empty. I'd eat something, maybe watch 30 minutes of TV and pass out. I was sleeping harder than I had in years. Deep, dreamless, dead-to-the-world sleep. That changed on the night of February 11th. I remember the date because it was a Tuesday, and I'd had to work a double shift. I got home around 11:15, took a shower, ate some leftover brisket straight out of the container, and went to bed. I didn't even brush my teeth. I just hit the mattress and I was out. I don't know what time it was when I woke up. It was still dark. The room was cold, colder than it should have been. I remember being aware of that before anything else. The cold, not like the heater had kicked off. This was different. This was a wet, heavy cold that felt like it had weight to it. I could feel it on my chest and my arms and the exposed part of my neck above the blanket. I tried to roll over and pull the covers up. I couldn't move. My eyes were open. I could see the ceiling. I could see the faint outline of the light fixture above me and the shadow where the wall met the ceiling in the corner. But my body was locked. Every muscle, every joint, every finger. I couldn't move my legs. I couldn't move my arms. I couldn't turn my head. I tried to open my mouth and nothing happened. I tried to scream and nothing came out. Not a whisper, not a sound. I'd heard of sleep paralysis before. I think most people have. You wake up but your body hasn't caught up yet, and for a few seconds or a minute or whatever, you're just stuck. I told myself that's what this was. I told myself to calm down, breathe, and wait it out. But then I heard the breathing. It wasn't mine. Mine was shallow and fast, barely getting air because my chest felt like something was pressing down on it. This breathing was slow, deep, steady. It came from somewhere near the foot of the bed, low and rhythmic, in through the nose, out through the mouth, in through the nose, out through the mouth. I strained my eyes to look down toward the end of the mattress. I couldn't tilt my head, so all I had was whatever I could see from the angle I was stuck at. And at first, I didn't see anything. Just the dark shape of my dresser against the far wall and the faint line of the window frame. Then something shifted. In the space between the foot of the bed and the dresser, there was a shape. It was tall. Taller than a person should have been in that spot unless they were standing on something. It was dark. Not just dark skin or dark clothes, but dark in a way that made the rest of the room seem lighter by comparison. I couldn't make out features, no face, no hands, Just a shape that stood upright and didn't move and breathed in that same slow, steady rhythm. I tried to scream again. Nothing. I tried to kick. My legs didn't respond. This went on for what felt like 5 or 6 minutes, but it could have been 30 seconds. I have no idea. Time doesn't work right in that state. At some point, the cold started to ease. My fingers twitched. My right foot jerked. And then, all at once, it was over. My body unlocked and I sat up in bed so fast I nearly fell off the side. The room was empty. I turned on every light in the house. I checked the doors. I checked the windows. Everything was locked. Nothing was out of place. I sat on the couch with the living room light on and my grandpa's 20 gauge across my lap until the sun came up. I didn't sleep the next night, or the night after that. I told myself it was a one-time thing. Stress from the new job, bad sleep schedule. I read some stuff online about sleep paralysis and everything lined up. The inability to move, the pressure on the chest, the feeling of a presence in the room. It's all textbook. The brain wakes up before the body does, and the leftover dream state fills in the gaps with whatever scares you most. That's the explanation. That's the science. I believed it. I really did. For about a week. The second episode happened on February 19th. Same setup. I'd worked a long day, came home exhausted, fell asleep fast, woke up paralyzed. Same cold, same pressure, same breathing. But this time, it was closer. The shape was at the side of the bed, my left side. It stood right there next to me, so close that if I'd been able to reach out, I could have touched it. I could hear the breathing right next to my ear now. Slow and wet. Not labored, not ragged. Just present, calm, patient. And this time, I noticed something else. A smell, faint, but there. It was sour and thick. Like old meat left in a plastic bag. Like something that had been dead for a while, but not long enough to dry out. It sat in the back of my throat and I could taste it. I was frozen for what felt like 10 minutes. The shape didn't move. It just stood there. I could feel heat coming off of it. Not warmth. Heat. The kind that radiates from a body. From skin. From something alive and standing inches away from your face in the dark. When it ended and my body unlocked, I rolled off the bed and hit the floor. I crawled to the wall and slapped the light switch. The room was empty again, but the smell wasn't gone. It lingered, faint, hanging in the air near the bed. I stood there, breathing through my mouth, staring at the empty space where the shape had been. The carpet was undisturbed. The bed sheets were exactly where they'd been. Nothing was out of place. But the smell was there. It was real. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a hallucination. You can't smell things in your sleep. I looked that up. Sleep paralysis can produce visual and auditory hallucinations, sometimes even tactile ones, feeling touched or pressed down. But olfactory hallucinations during sleep paralysis are extremely rare, almost unheard of. And even when they do happen, they don't linger after you wake up. They stop when the episode stops. This didn't stop. I slept on the couch for the next 4 nights, kept the TV on and all the lights burning. I thought maybe if I didn't sleep in that room, it wouldn't happen, and it didn't, for a while. Then I got comfortable again. That's the thing about fear. It fades. Your brain can't sustain it. After a week of nothing happening, I started to feel stupid. A grown man sleeping on his couch with the lights on because he had a bad dream. I moved back to the bedroom on February 27th and told myself I was done being ridiculous. I fell asleep around 10:30. I woke up at 1:48 a.m. I know the exact time because my phone was on the nightstand and my eyes went straight to it the second I realized I was paralyzed again. 1:48. The cold was worse this time. It felt heavy, oppressive. The air in the room had a thickness to it that made breathing difficult even beyond the pressure on my chest. And the shape was back. It wasn't standing beside the bed this time. It was on the bed. I could feel the mattress dipping near my feet. I could feel weight, actual, physical weight pressing down on the end of the bed, tilting the surface toward whatever was sitting there, and I could feel it moving. Slowly, inch by inch. The depression in the mattress crept up from the foot of the bed toward my legs, then my waist, then my chest. Something was crawling up the bed toward me, and I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I couldn't do anything except stare at the ceiling and feel it getting closer. The breathing was right above my face now. I could feel the air hitting my skin, each exhale warm and wet and sour. The smell was overwhelming. Rot, decay, something old and wrong and close. And then I felt fingers on my chest, 5 points of pressure, light at first, then pushing down. Hard, harder than a person should be able to push with one hand. I felt the cartilage in my ribs creak under the force. I couldn't breathe. My vision started going gray at the edges. I was going to pass out. I was going to suffocate in my own bed with something sitting on top of me and pressing me into the mattress. Then it stopped. All of it. All at once. The weight, the cold, the pressure, the breathing. Gone. I gasped and rolled onto my side and vomited over the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't hold my phone. I lay there on my side, drooling bile onto the floor, and I cried. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I cried because I was terrified, and because I was alone, and because whatever was happening to me was getting worse, and I didn't understand it. I called in sick the next day. I drove to the urgent care in San Angelo and told the doctor I was having episodes of sleep paralysis. She was nice about it. She said it was common, especially in people with irregular sleep schedules. She prescribed me something to help me sleep deeper, some kind of mild sedative, and told me to try to keep a consistent bedtime. She said the episodes usually resolve on their own. I picked up the prescription and took one that night. I slept through until 6 a.m., no paralysis, no shapes, no breathing. The pills worked for about 2 weeks. I took one every night and slept soundly and started to feel normal again. I went back to work. I stopped checking the locks 3 times before bed. I stopped leaving the hallway light on. Then, on March 15th, I ran out of pills. The pharmacy said they needed a new prescription, and the earliest the doctor could see me was the following Monday. That was 5 days away. I figured I'd be fine. I'd been sleeping well, my body was rested. Whatever had been causing the episodes was probably gone. I went to bed at 11. I fell asleep fast. I don't know exactly when I woke up, because this time my phone wasn't on the nightstand. I'd left it in the kitchen, plugged in on the counter. I woke up paralyzed, but something was different. The room wasn't dark. There was light coming through the window. Not moonlight. It was too bright and too steady for that. It had a pale bluish quality to it that lit up the whole room in this faint, sick glow. I could see everything. The dresser, the closet door, the ceiling fan, the dead cedar tree outside the window, its bare branches pressing against the glass. And I could see the shape. It was standing in the corner of the room, the far corner, near the closet. For the first time, I could actually see it clearly. It was tall, impossibly tall. Its head was nearly touching the ceiling, and the ceiling in that room is 8 feet. It was thin. So thin that the proportions were wrong. The arms hung down past where the knees would be, and the fingers were long and curled slightly inward. The skin, if that's what it was dark and slick, and it caught the pale light from the window in a way that made it look wet. It didn't have a face. Not in the way that a person has a face. There were features, but they were wrong. The eyes were too wide and too far apart, and they didn't reflect light. They absorbed it, like holes. The mouth was a thin, straight line that ran too far across the width of the head. There was no nose, just smooth, dark, wet-looking surface between the eyes and the mouth. It was watching me. I could feel it. Not just looking at me, studying me. The way you'd look at something pinned to a board. And then the mouth opened. It didn't make a sound. It just opened, slowly, wider than any mouth should open. The line split apart and kept going, revealing a dark, empty space inside that seemed to go back farther than the head should have allowed. No teeth, no tongue, just an opening that kept getting wider and wider until the entire lower half of the face was gone, and there was just this gaping black void where a jaw should have been. I felt something pull at my chest. Not physical pressure this time, something deeper. Something inside me was being tugged toward that opening. I could feel it in my sternum, behind my ribs, in the center of my body, a pulling sensation, a draining, and the cold got worse and the room got darker and my vision started tunneling down to just that face, that open mouth, that hole. I don't know how long it lasted. Seconds, minutes. I don't know. But when it ended, when my body unlocked and I could move again, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't vomit. I just lay there, because I was too tired. I was exhausted in a way I'd never been before. Not sleepy, emptied, drained. I felt like I'd run 20 miles and then donated blood. I lay there until the sun came up. When I finally got out of bed, I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked sick. My skin was gray. My eyes were sunken. I'd lost weight. I could see it in my face and my neck. I called my buddy Dalton. He's the one I used to share the duplex with in Lubbock. I told him everything, all of it. The paralysis, the shape, the breathing, the fingers, the face. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said I should talk to someone. Not a doctor. He meant a priest or a pastor or something. He grew up Church of Christ and he still believes in that stuff. I told him I didn't think this was a demon or a ghost or whatever. I told him I thought something was medically wrong with me. He said okay, but he didn't sound convinced. I got the new prescription on Monday and started taking the pills again. They worked. Again, the episode stopped. I slept. I started eating more. I put some of the weight back on. By the end of March, I was almost feeling normal. But here's the thing. The pills helped me sleep, but they didn't fix what was happening in the house. Because things were happening during the day, too. Small things at first. Things I could explain away. I'd come home from work and a cabinet door would be open. I'd find the bathroom light on when I knew I'd turned it off. One afternoon, I came in through the front door, and there were muddy footprints on the kitchen floor. They were bare feet. No tread pattern. Just smooth, flat prints, wider than mine, with long toes. They came from the hallway, crossed the kitchen, and stopped at the back door. The back door was locked, from the inside. I stood there staring at those prints for a long time. Then I mopped the floor, and told myself I'd track them in somehow and just didn't remember. But I was wearing boots. I'm always wearing boots. And those prints were bare feet. Then the scratching started. At first I thought it was the cedar tree. The branches were close to the bedroom window, and when the wind blew, they'd scrape against the glass. It's an old house. Things make noise. But after a while, I realized the scratching didn't match the wind. Sometimes it came when the air was dead still. Sometimes it came from the wrong side of the house, the side without any trees. Sometimes it came from inside the walls. It was worst at night. I'd be lying in bed, medicated, half asleep, and I'd hear it. Slow, rhythmic scratching coming from inside the wall behind my headboard. Not random, patterned. 3 scratches, a pause, 3 scratches, a pause. Over and over. Like something was trying to tell me it was there. Like something wanted me to know. I checked the attic. I checked under the house. I set traps for rats and raccoons. I found nothing. No droppings, no chew marks, no signs of any animal. On April 2nd, I came home from work and the bedroom window was open. Not broken. Open. Slid up about 6 inches. The screen was still in place, and it was latched from the inside. The window had been opened from inside the room. I'd been at work since 6 a.m. Nobody else has a key. Nobody else had been in the house. I closed the window. I locked it. I checked every other window and door. Everything else was secure. I sat on the couch and tried to think of a rational explanation, and I couldn't come up with one. That night, I took my pill and went to bed. I fell asleep around 10:45. I woke up at 2:13 a.m. The pill hadn't worked. I was paralyzed. Flat on my back, eyes open. The room was dark, but not completely. There was just enough ambient light to see outlines and shapes. The shape was on the ceiling. It was directly above me. Pressed against the ceiling with its arms and legs spread wide, clinging to the surface. Its body was flat against the plaster, its head angled down, and those eyes, those dark, empty, light-absorbing eyes, were looking straight into mine from maybe 3 feet away. The mouth was already open. I felt the pulling immediately, stronger than before, so strong it hurt. It felt like something was being ripped out of the center of my chest, pulled upward through my ribs and my throat toward that gaping black opening above me. The cold was absolute. I couldn't feel the bed under me. I couldn't feel the blankets. I couldn't feel anything except the pulling and the cold and the growing emptiness spreading through my body. My vision started to go. Not dark, white, bright, colorless white, starting at the edges and closing in. I couldn't hear anything. Not the breathing, not the scratching, not even my own heartbeat. Just silence and white and cold and the feeling of being drained. I thought I was dying. I was certain of it. Whatever this thing was, it was killing me, and I was going to die alone in my grandpa's house in the middle of nowhere, and nobody would find me for days. Then something happened that I still can't explain. I heard my grandpa's voice, clear, close, real, not in my head, in the room, right next to my ear. He said one word, "Move," and I did. My right hand came up off the mattress and I swung it at the shape above me. My fist connected with something solid, cold and hard and wet. It felt wrong under my knuckles, not bone and not flesh. Something else. Something that gave slightly on impact and then contracted, pulling away from my hand. The thing on the ceiling made a sound. The first sound I'd ever heard it make. It was high-pitched, almost beyond the range of hearing, and it vibrated in my teeth and in the bones of my skull. It pulled back from me. I could feel the weight shifting on the ceiling above me. And then it moved, fast. Faster than anything that size should be able to move. It went across the ceiling to the window. I heard the glass crack. Not shatter, crack. A single sharp snap, and then scraping, and then nothing. I could move. The paralysis was gone. I rolled off the bed, hit the light switch, and stood there shaking. The room was empty, but the window was cracked. A single line running diagonally across the glass from one corner to the other. And on the ceiling, directly above where I'd been lying, there were marks. 5 long, thin impressions in the plaster, roughly the size and spacing of fingers. They were pressed into the surface about 1/8 of an inch deep, as if something had been gripping the ceiling hard enough to dent it. I touched one of the marks. The plaster was cold, not room temperature, cold, freezing cold, even though it was the middle of the night in West Texas and the heater was on. I didn't stay in the house that night. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and the 20 gauge, and I drove to Dalton's place in Lubbock. I made it there by 4:30 in the morning. He took one look at my face and didn't ask any questions. He just let me in and gave me the couch and sat up in the recliner with me until the sun came up. I told him everything. He didn't say I was crazy. He didn't try to rationalize it. He just listened, and when I was done, he said we should go back to the house together. In the daylight. He wanted to see the ceiling. He wanted to see the window. We drove down the next morning. When we got there, the house was exactly how I'd left it. Front door locked, lights on, my bed unmade, the covers thrown onto the floor. The window was still cracked. The diagonal line was there, clear as day. Dalton ran his finger along it and didn't say anything. Then we looked at the ceiling. The marks were still there. 5 impressions, deep enough to catch shadows from the overhead light. Dalton stood on the bed and reached up and put his hand next to them. His fingers didn't even come close to matching the spread. The marks were wider, longer, and the spacing between them was wrong. Too even, too precise. He stood there on the bed with his hand next to those marks and looked at me and said, "We need to get you out of this house." I didn't argue. I stayed with Dalton for 2 weeks. I didn't go back to the house at all during that time. I called into work and told them I had a family emergency. I barely slept even at Dalton's place. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel it. The cold, the pulling, those empty eyes 3 feet above my face. But the paralysis didn't happen. Not once. Not at Dalton's apartment. Not anywhere except that house. After 2 weeks, Dalton put me in touch with a woman named Rita. She was 60-something, lived outside of Abilene, and she did some kind of spiritual work. Not a priest, not an exorcist. She called herself a practitioner. I didn't care what she called herself. I was out of options. She drove out to the house on a Thursday afternoon. Dalton and I met her there. She was a small woman with gray hair and steady hands, and she didn't seem surprised by anything I told her. She walked through the house slowly, room by room. She spent a long time in the bedroom. She looked at the ceiling marks. She looked at the cracked window. She stood in the corner where I'd first seen the shape, and she stood very still for a long time. Then she went outside and looked at the cedar tree. She stared at it for probably 5 minutes. The dead branches, the gray bark, the way it leaned slightly toward the house. Then she turned to me and asked how long the tree had been dead. I told her I didn't know. It was already dead when I moved in. She asked if my grandpa had ever mentioned it. I said no. My grandpa hadn't talked much about the house. She walked around the base of the tree. She got down on her hands and knees and looked at the roots where they went into the ground. Then she stood up and brushed off her jeans and looked at me. She said the tree needed to come down. She said whatever I'd been seeing in that bedroom, it was connected to the tree. She couldn't explain how or why. She just said she could feel it. She said the tree was wrong and it needed to come down and I needed to burn it. Every piece, every branch. She said not to leave any of it on the property. I asked her what was in my house. She was quiet for a minute. Then she said she didn't know what to call it. She said it was old, older than the house, maybe older than anything built on this land. She said it had been here before my grandpa and before whoever owned the land before him. She said it had been sleeping for a long time and something woke it up. I asked her what woke it up. She said, "You did. You sleep deep. It's attracted to that." I didn't fully understand what she meant. I still don't, but I believed her. Something in the way she said it, something in the way she'd looked at that tree, I believed her. Dalton and I rented a chainsaw the next morning. It took us most of the day to bring the tree down and cut it into pieces. The wood was strange. It was dry on the outside but wet on the inside, even though the tree had clearly been dead for years. The inner wood was dark, almost black, and it had a smell. That same sour, thick, rotten smell from the bedroom. When the saw cut through the trunk, sap came out. Dark, thick sap that didn't look right. It was almost the color of old blood and it was warm. Not hot, just warm. Warmer than wood should be. We piled everything in the middle of the back pasture. I doused it in diesel and lit it. The fire burned for hours. The smoke was black and heavy and it smelled wrong. Not like burning wood. Not like anything I can describe. The smoke went straight up into the sky, even though there was a steady breeze from the west. Straight up. Column of black smoke rising into a clear blue sky. We sat in the bed of my truck and watched it burn. When it was done, when there was nothing left but gray ash and charred ground, Dalton looked at me and said he felt better. He said the air felt different, lighter. I noticed it too. The weight that had been hanging over that house for months, that oppressive, thick feeling, was gone. That was 3.5 weeks ago. I moved back into the house the next day. I stopped taking the pills. I've been sleeping in the bedroom every night since, and the paralysis hasn't come back. Not once. No cold, no breathing, no shapes, no scratching in the walls, no footprints on the floor, no windows found open. It's over. But here's the part that still keeps me up at night, the part I haven't been able to let go of. After we burned the tree, I went through some of my grandpa's things. He had a filing cabinet in the hallway closet that I'd never gone through, mostly old tax documents and insurance papers. But in the bottom drawer, in a manila envelope with no label, I found a stack of photographs. They were old, black and white. Some of them had dates written on the back in pencil. The earliest one was from 1951. Most of the photos were of the house and the property. The house being built, the fence going up, my grandpa as a young man standing next to a truck I didn't recognize. Normal stuff. But 3 of the photos were of the cedar tree. In the first one, the tree was alive. Green, full, healthy. My grandpa was standing next to it with a woman I think was my grandma. The date on the back said June of 1953. In the second photo, the tree was dead. Bare branches, gray bark, exactly the way it looked when I moved in. The date on the back said October of 1954, 1 year later. Something killed that tree fast. The third photo was different. It was taken at night, with a flash. The tree was dead, same as the second photo, but there was something in the branches. I had to hold the photo under the kitchen light and squint to see it clearly. It was high up in the tree, maybe 15 or 20 feet off the ground, tangled in the bare branches. It was long and thin and dark, and its arms were wrapped around the trunk. And it was looking at the camera. I could see the eyes, wide and far apart. And below them, the mouth. That thin, straight line running too far across the face. On the back of the photo in my grandpa's handwriting, there were 2 words. Still there. He knew. My grandpa knew. He lived in this house for 47 years, and he knew that thing was in the tree, and he never told anyone. He never cut it down. He never burned it. He just left it there and went about his life and slept in that bedroom 30 feet away from it for nearly half a century. I don't know why it never came for him. Maybe it was asleep the whole time. Maybe it was waiting. Maybe the pills he took. My grandpa was on medication for years before he died. Kept him from sleeping deep enough for it to reach him. I don't know. What I do know is this. The thing in that tree was real. The marks on my ceiling are still there. The crack in the window is still there. The scar on my right hand where my knuckles split open when I hit it is still there. The photo is in my nightstand drawer. I go out to the back pasture sometimes and stand where the tree used to be. The ground is still scorched. Nothing has grown back. The grass around the burned circle is green and healthy, but inside it, nothing. Just black dirt and ash. Dalton says I should move, sell the place, take whatever I can get for it and leave. But I'm not going to, because that thing came into my house, and it put its hands on me and it tried to take something from me, and it failed. I'm still here. I sleep in that bedroom every night. I sleep deep, and I sleep hard, and I don't take any pills, and nothing comes for me. Whatever was in that tree is gone. I burned it. Every branch. Every piece. But sometimes, and this is the last thing I'll say, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, and for just a second, just a flash, I think I can hear breathing, slow and steady, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And then I realize it's just mine, and then I close my eyes, and then I go back to sleep. Because it's over. The stump hole where the tree stood has started filling with rainwater. Last week I walked out there after a storm and looked down into it. The water was dark. Too dark for rainwater, almost black. And it was warm. I filled it with concrete the next morning, 43 bags. Dalton helped me mix it. We poured it in and smoothed it flat and let it cure for 2 days. On the 3rd morning, I went out to check it. The surface of the concrete had 5 long cracks running through it, radiating out from the center, spaced evenly apart. The same width, the same length, the same spacing as the marks on my ceiling. I haven't been out to the pasture since, and I don't plan to. Some things don't stay buried, but I have to believe this one will. I don't have a choice. I'm writing this from a hotel room in Gainesville, room 214 at the Hampton Inn off I-75. My daughter is asleep in the bed next to mine. She's 7. Her name is Chloe. She doesn't know why we left the house. She thinks we're on a trip. I told her it was a surprise vacation, and she believed me because she's 7 and she still trusts me. I need to keep it that way. I set up the cameras 4 weeks ago. I want to start there because that's when everything changed. Not when the paralysis started. That had been going on for almost 2 months by then. But the cameras are when I stopped being able to tell myself it was just a medical condition. The cameras are when I realized I was dealing with something that had a plan. But I need to back up. My name is Megan. I'm 35. I lived in a townhouse in Palm Coast, Florida. 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a small backyard that opens onto a retention pond. I bought the place after my divorce was finalized in August of 2024. It was the first home I'd ever owned by myself. I work from home doing medical coding for a hospital network in Jacksonville. I sit at my desk in the 2nd bedroom from 8 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, and I type diagnostic codes into a system that hasn't been updated since 2016. It's not glamorous. It pays the bills. Chloe is with me during the week, and with her dad every other weekend. When she's at his place, the townhouse is quiet. Really quiet. I don't have a dog. I don't have a roommate. I have a TV that I leave on for background noise, and a white noise machine in my bedroom that plays ocean sounds because I've never been able to sleep in total silence. The first episode happened on January 9th of 2025. A Thursday night. Chloe was with me. She'd gone to bed around 8:30. I stayed up until maybe 11, scrolling my phone in bed, and then I turned off the light and fell asleep. I woke up on my back. That was the first thing I noticed because I never sleep on my back. I'm a side sleeper, have been my whole life. But I was flat on my back with my arms at my sides and I was awake and I could not move. The room was dark, except for the glow of the white noise machine on the nightstand. The ocean sounds were still playing. I could hear them clearly. Waves, steady rolling waves. And underneath the waves, something else. A sound that didn't belong in the recording. A low, continuous hum, not mechanical, organic, coming from inside the room. I tried to move my hands. Nothing. I tried to lift my head. Nothing. I tried to call out for Chloe, not because I wanted to scare her, but because the panic was so immediate and so total that I couldn't think past it. My mouth wouldn't open. My throat wouldn't work. I was locked inside my own body, and I could do nothing except lie there and listen to that hum. It lasted maybe 2 minutes. Then it was over. My body released and I sat up gasping and reached for the lamp and turned it on and sat there in the light, breathing hard, looking around the room. Everything was normal. The door was closed. The closet was closed. Nothing was out of place. I got up and checked on Chloe. She was sound asleep, curled up on her side with her stuffed manatee tucked under her chin. I stood in her doorway and watched her breathe and told myself I'd had a nightmare. That's all. A nightmare. It happened again 3 nights later. Same thing. Woke up on my back, paralyzed humming sound. This time there was also pressure on my chest. Not painful, just heavy, persistent. I lay there for what felt like 5 minutes before it released. The third time was January 20th. Chloe was at her dad's. I was alone in the house. I woke up paralyzed at 1:52 a.m. I could see my alarm clock on the dresser, and this time, there was something in the room with me. It was standing at the foot of the bed. I couldn't see it clearly. It was dark, and the only light was the green glow of the alarm clock. But I could see a shape, tall, still, not moving, just standing there in the space between the bed and the wall, and the humming was coming from it. The humming was its voice. I understood that immediately. It wasn't a background noise. It wasn't ambient. It was coming from the shape at the foot of my bed. A low, steady, unwavering tone, and it was aimed at me. I know how that sounds. I know. But I need to describe it as accurately as I can, because the accuracy matters. What happened later doesn't make sense without it. The episode lasted longer this time, maybe 7 or 8 minutes. When it ended and I could move, the shape was gone. The humming stopped. I turned on every light in the townhouse and sat in the living room until morning. I made an appointment with my doctor. She referred me to a sleep specialist. The sleep specialist, Dr. Kessler, out of Daytona, told me sleep paralysis was more common than people think. She said it affects roughly 8% of the population at some point in their lives. She said the hallucinations were normal. The pressure, the presence, the sounds, all textbook. She said stress and irregular sleep were the most common triggers. She asked if anything had changed in my life recently. I told her about the divorce, the new house, the adjustment of living alone. She nodded and said that was probably the cause. She recommended better sleep hygiene, no screens an hour before bed, and a consistent schedule. She said if it persisted, we could discuss medication. I followed her advice. It didn't help. The episodes kept coming. 2 or 3 times a week, always between 1 and 3 a.m. Always the same pattern. Wake up on my back, paralyzed, humming, pressure, shape at the foot of the bed. Sometimes the shape was closer. Sometimes it was farther away. but it was always there. By mid-February, the shape had moved to the side of the bed, my side, the right side, closest to the wall. It stood in the narrow gap between the mattress and the closet door, and I could feel it looking down at me, even though I couldn't see a face. The humming was louder when it was close, not painful, not unpleasant even, just loud. It filled my head and I could feel it in my jaw and in the bones behind my eyes. That's when I noticed the first thing I couldn't explain. After an episode on February 18th, I got up to use the bathroom. I turned on the light and looked at myself in the mirror. There was a mark on my neck, left side, just below my ear. A small, round bruise. Dark purple, about the size of a dime. I touched it and it was tender, sore, real. I hadn't bumped into anything. I hadn't hit myself in my sleep. The mark was clean and round and perfectly placed, and it hadn't been there when I went to bed. It faded in about 4 days. Then after the next episode, a new one appeared. Same spot, same size, same shape. Left side of the neck, just below the ear. That happened 3 more times, always after an episode, always in the same spot, always a perfect circle. I went back to Dr. Kessler. I showed her the mark. She examined it, took a photo, and said it was probably a pressure point bruise from sleeping in an unusual position. She said lying on your back with your head turned to one side could create that kind of mark if sustained pressure was applied to the skin. She didn't seem concerned. I wanted to believe her. I tried to believe her. But the marks kept appearing, and they were always in the exact same spot, and they were always perfectly round, and I'd never in my life gotten a bruise from sleeping. That's when I bought the cameras. I ordered 3 of them from Amazon. Small, wireless, night vision capable. I put one on my dresser facing the bed, one on the bookshelf in the corner facing the bedroom door, and one in the hallway outside Chloe's room. I connected them to an app on my phone and set them to record continuously from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The first few nights, nothing happened. I slept through, no paralysis, no episodes. The footage showed me sleeping on my side, shifting occasionally, normal movement, boring. Then, on March 4th, I had an episode. A bad one. I woke up paralyzed. The shape was at the side of the bed. The humming was so loud I could feel my teeth vibrating, and the pressure on my chest was heavier than it had ever been. It lasted what felt like 10 minutes. When it was over, I had a new mark on my neck. I grabbed my phone and opened the camera app and pulled up the footage. The timestamp showed the episode had occurred between 2:11 and 2:24 a.m. 13 minutes. I scrubbed to 2:11 and watched. On the screen, I could see myself in the green tint of the night vision. I was on my side. Then, at 2:11 and 14 seconds, I rolled onto my back. My arms moved to my sides. My legs straightened. The movement was smooth and continuous, but it didn't look natural. It looked mechanical, controlled, not the way a person shifts in their sleep. And then I just lay there, still, for 13 minutes, not a twitch, not a breath that I could see, just flat on my back, motionless. There was nothing else in the room, no shape, no figure, nothing at the foot of the bed, nothing at the side of the bed, nothing anywhere. The room was empty, just me, lying perfectly still on the mattress. I watched the entire 13 minutes. I watched it twice. Nothing appeared. Nothing entered the room. Nothing left. There was just me. But here's what made my stomach drop. At 2:24, when the episode ended, when I remembered gasping and sitting up and grabbing for the lamp, the footage showed something different. At 2:24, I didn't sit up. I didn't gasp. I didn't reach for anything. I turned my head to the left, slowly, and I opened my eyes, and I looked directly into the camera on the dresser. I stared at the camera for 6 seconds. My eyes were open. My face was calm. There was no panic, no confusion, no distress. I just looked at the camera with an expression I don't recognize on my own face. And then I closed my eyes and rolled onto my side and went back to sleep. I don't remember doing that. I don't remember looking at the camera. I remember the episode ending. I remember sitting up. I remember turning on the lamp. But the footage doesn't show any of that. The footage shows me turning my head, opening my eyes, staring at the camera, and going back to sleep. The lamp never comes on. I never sit up, not on the recording. My memory and the footage don't match. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat in the living room and watched the clip over and over. I zoomed in on my face during those 6 seconds. My expression was wrong. Not scared, not confused, aware, present. Whatever was behind those eyes in those 6 seconds, it knew the camera was there. It knew it was being watched. And it looked directly into the lens, and it didn't care. I called Dr. Kessler's office the next morning and told her I needed to come in. I brought my phone. I showed her the footage. She watched it twice, then set the phone down and told me that parasomnia, abnormal behavior during sleep, was a known companion to sleep paralysis. She said some people sit up, talk, walk, and perform complex actions during episodes without retaining any memory of it. She said the disconnect between my memory and the footage was consistent with a dissociative sleep event. She said it was nothing to worry about. I asked her about the expression on my face. She said it was impossible to draw clinical conclusions from low-resolution night vision footage. I left her office and sat in my car in the parking lot and cried. Not because I was sad, because I was terrified and no one was taking it seriously and I didn't know what to do. I kept the cameras running, every night. I reviewed the footage every morning. For the next 2 weeks, the pattern held. Every episode followed the same sequence. I'd roll onto my back at the onset, lie still for the duration, and at the end, I'd turn my head and stare at the camera. Every time. Same expression, same 6 seconds. Same calm, aware, wrong look on my face. And the room was always empty on the footage. Whatever I was seeing during the episodes, the shape, the figure, the presence, the cameras never captured it, not once, not even a shadow, not even a blur. But the marks on my neck were real. They showed up after every episode. Same spot, same size, perfectly round. I started photographing them with timestamps. I had 11 photos by the end of March. On March 29th, something changed. I had an episode while Chloe was home. That had happened before. The first episode had been while she was there. But this time, when the episode ended and my body released, I heard something. A sound from down the hall. From Chloe's room, humming, the same hum, the same low, steady, unwavering tone, coming from my daughter's bedroom at 2:40 in the morning. I was out of bed and down the hall in 3 seconds. I threw open her door and turned on the light. Chloe was in bed on her back, arms at her sides, legs straight, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, not moving. I said her name. She didn't respond. I said it again, louder, nothing. I grabbed her shoulders and shook her, and her body was rigid, stiff. Her eyes were open and unfocused, and her mouth was slightly open, and the humming was coming from her throat. My 7-year-old daughter was lying in bed, paralyzed, making a sound that no 7-year-old should be able to make. It was too low, too controlled, too steady. It didn't waver. It didn't break. It just poured out of her like a signal being broadcast through her body. I held her and said her name over and over, and after about 90 seconds she blinked. Her body relaxed. She looked at me and started crying. I asked her what happened. She said she woke up and couldn't move. She said there was something in her room. She said it was standing next to her bed and it was touching her neck. I looked at the left side of her neck, just below her ear. There was a mark, small, round, dark purple, the size of a dime. I pulled up the camera footage from the hallway. The camera faced Chloe's door, which had been open about 6 inches. Through the gap, in the green night vision, I could see a sliver of her room. Her bed was partially visible. At 2:38 a.m., a shadow passed in front of the gap. Something moved inside Chloe's room, crossing between the door and the bed. It was fast, less than a second of movement, but it was there. A dark shape, tall, passing through the frame. The cameras in my bedroom had never captured anything, not once. But the hallway camera caught something in Chloe's room. I watched that 1-second clip maybe 50 times. The shape was indistinct, blurred by the motion and the narrow angle through the door. But it was real. It was on the recording. It had mass and dimension, and it moved through physical space. Whatever this was, it wasn't just in my head anymore. It was in my daughter's room. It was touching my daughter. I called my ex-husband, Derek. It was 3:15 in the morning. He answered on the fourth ring. I told him something was happening in the house and Chloe wasn't safe and I needed him to come get her. He asked what was going on. I told him I'd explain later. He said he was 45 minutes away and he'd be there as fast as he could. I packed a bag for Chloe. She was awake, sitting up in bed, holding her manatee. She was calm. Kids are strange that way. She'd been terrified for 90 seconds and now she was watching me pack her bag and asking if she could bring her coloring books. Derek showed up at 4. I handed him Chloe's bag and told him to take her and not bring her back until I said it was okay. He wanted to talk about it. He wanted to come inside. I told him no. I told him to go. He looked at me with that expression he used to get when he thought I was being irrational, but he took Chloe and he left. I went back inside and sat on the couch and waited for sunrise. Over the next week, I didn't sleep in the bedroom. I slept on the couch with the lights on. The episodes still came. The couch didn't matter. The lights didn't matter. I'd wake up paralyzed, flat on my back, even though the couch was narrow and I'd fallen asleep on my side. And the humming would fill the room and I could feel the pressure on my chest and the presence standing over me. But now there was something new. During the episodes, I started seeing things I hadn't seen before. Not just the shape, details. It had hands. Long, narrow hands with thin fingers that ended in small, round pads. Not fingertips, pads. Smooth and flat, slightly wider than the fingers they were attached to. During the episode on April 1st, I watched one of those hands reach toward my neck. I couldn't move. I couldn't turn away. The fingers made contact with my skin just below my left ear, and the pads pressed down, and I felt a warmth spread from the point of contact through my jaw and into my skull. The humming got louder when it touched me, not from outside, from inside my head. The sound was inside me, resonating in my bones, and the warmth spread, and I could feel something opening. Not a physical opening, something in my mind, a space being made, room being cleared. When the episode ended, I sat up and touched my neck. The mark was there, fresh, warm to the touch. I photographed it. I opened the camera app. I watched the footage, and this time, the footage showed something new. During the episode, while I lay paralyzed on the couch, my right hand had risen off my body, slowly, independently, while the rest of me was motionless. My right hand floated up and moved to my neck. My own fingers pressed against the spot below my left ear and held there for the duration of the episode. I was making the marks myself, my own hand, my own fingers, pressing into my own skin hard enough to leave a bruise while I lay paralyzed and hallucinated a figure touching me. I watched the footage 3 times. There was no question. My hand moved on its own, or something moved it, and it pressed into my neck in the exact spot where the marks always appeared. The motion was slow and precise, and my fingers curled into a position that didn't look natural. The pads of my fingertips pressed flat against my skin in a way that required my hand to be rotated at an angle that would have been uncomfortable if I'd been conscious. But here's what I keep coming back to. Here's what Dr. Kessler and her parasomnia diagnosis can't explain. The marks were round, perfectly round, dime-sized. My fingertips are not round, they're oval. They're the shape of normal human fingertips, and the pressure required to leave a bruise that dark. I tried to replicate it while awake. I pressed my fingers into the same spot with as much force as I could stand. Held it for 13 minutes. No bruise, not even a red mark. Whatever was pressing against my skin during those episodes was pressing harder than I could press voluntarily. And it was leaving a mark shaped differently than my own fingers. Something was using my hand, wearing it, operating it from somewhere I couldn't see. I stopped sleeping. I actually stopped. For 3 days, I didn't close my eyes for more than a few seconds at a time. I drank coffee until my hands trembled. I walked laps around the townhouse at 2 a.m. just to keep my legs moving. I stood in the shower with cold water running over my head at 4 a.m. because I felt myself drifting. On the fourth day, I collapsed. I fell asleep at my desk in the middle of a work call. My head went down and I was gone. And the episode came instantly. No build-up, no transition. I was awake and then I was paralyzed, and the humming was there, and the shape was standing behind my chair, and both of its hands were on my head. I could feel the pads on my temples, pressing. The warmth was immediate and intense, and the opening in my mind widened, and something poured in. Not a thought, not a voice, information, raw, unprocessed, sensory data that didn't belong to me. I saw rooms I'd never been in, faces I'd never seen. I felt emotions that weren't mine, patient, calculating focus directed at something I couldn't identify. And underneath all of it, a hunger, not for food, for space, for room, for the territory inside my skull. The episode lasted 22 minutes. I know because my work call was still connected when I came to, and my colleague had been talking to dead air for almost half an hour. That night, I did something I'd been avoiding. I went to the county property records office and pulled the history on my townhouse. I wanted to know who had lived there before me. The townhouse was built in 2011. The first owner was a couple named Rivera. They lived there for 4 years, sold it in 2015. The second owner was a woman named Deborah Linden. She bought it in 2015 and sold it in 2022. The third owner was a man named Paul Ash. He bought it in 2022. Paul Ash didn't sell the townhouse. Paul Ash died in it. He died on June 14th of 2024. He was 41. The listing I'd bought the house through had been an estate sale. I'd known that when I purchased it. I hadn't thought much about it. People die. Estates get settled. Houses get sold. It's Florida. Half the real estate on the market at any given time is from someone who passed away. But I hadn't asked how he died. I searched his name. There wasn't much. A short obituary in the Flagler County newspaper, a memorial page with no comments, a Facebook profile that had been inactive since May of 2024. I found one more thing, a post in a local community forum from March of 2024, 3 months before Paul Ash died. The post was titled, "Has anyone experienced sleep problems in the hammock area?" And it was written by a user named P_Ash_PC. The post was 4 paragraphs long. He described waking up paralyzed multiple times a week. He described a humming sound. He described a shape in his room. He described marks on his neck. He described waking up and finding footage on his security cameras that didn't match what he remembered. The post had 2 replies. One was from someone telling him to see a doctor. The other was from a user I couldn't identify, and all it said was, "Look at your hands during the footage. Watch what they do." Paul Ash didn't respond to either reply. He never posted on the forum again. He died 11 weeks later. I pulled his death certificate through a records request. The cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest. No underlying conditions noted. No drugs or alcohol in his system. He was found in his bed by a wellness check after he'd missed 4 days of work without calling in. He was found on his back. Arms at his sides, legs straight. I sat in my car outside the records office and read the death certificate 3 times, and then I called Derek and told him to keep Chloe. I told him I didn't know for how long. He started asking questions, and I hung up. I went back to the townhouse. I pulled up every piece of footage from every camera from the past 4 weeks. I reviewed all of it, every episode, every clip. I made a spreadsheet. I logged the timestamps, the duration of each episode, the behavior on the footage, and any marks that appeared afterward. Then I did something I hadn't thought to do before. I checked the footage from the hallway camera during my episodes, not during Chloe's. I'd already reviewed that. During mine. The hallway camera faced Chloe's door, but if I scrubbed through the footage during the times I was paralyzed in the bedroom, I could see the hallway. On the night of March 15th, at 2:17 a.m., while I was paralyzed in the bedroom, the hallway camera recorded my bedroom door opening, slowly, from the inside, and a figure stepped out. It was me. I walked out of the bedroom, down the hallway and into the kitchen. The camera only covered the hallway, so I lost sight of myself when I rounded the corner. 40 seconds later, I came back. I walked down the hall and went back into the bedroom and closed the door. On the footage from inside the bedroom, during that same time frame, I was lying motionless on the bed. I never moved. I never got up. The bedroom camera showed me flat on my back for the entire duration of the episode. The hallway camera showed me walking. Both cameras were recording at the same time. Both had matching timestamps. Both showed me the same person, the same body, the same clothes, in two different places simultaneously. I went to the kitchen. I looked around. Nothing was out of place. I opened drawers. I looked in cabinets. Then I looked at the kitchen table, and I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. There was a scratch on the surface. Not a deep gouge. A thin, precise line etched into the laminate. I ran my finger over it. It was recent. The edges were still sharp, the material still pale where it had been scored. It was a circle, a perfect circle, about the size of a dime. I checked the table again, more closely this time, running my hands over every inch of the surface. I found 11 more circles, all the same size, all scratched into the laminate with the same precision, 12 total. One for each episode that had produced a mark on my neck. Something was using my body while I lay paralyzed, walking it around the house, recording its work on my kitchen table, keeping count. I didn't stay in the townhouse that night. I packed a bag and drove to the Hampton Inn in Gainesville because it was far enough away that I felt like I could breathe. I checked in at 9:30 p.m. I brought the cameras. I set one up on the desk in the hotel room facing the bed. I didn't sleep. I sat up all night watching Chloe sleep in the next bed, checking her neck every hour. No marks, no humming, no episodes. She slept soundly, curled on her side, her manatee under her chin. That was 3 days ago. Last night I fell asleep. I didn't mean to. I was sitting up in the chair by the window and my eyes closed and I was gone. I woke up on my back, in the hotel bed, paralyzed. The humming was there. The pressure was there. The shape was standing between the two beds, inches from Chloe. It wasn't facing me, it was facing her. Its hand was extended. Those long, thin fingers with the round pads were reaching toward the left side of her neck. I fought. I fought harder than I've ever fought anything. Every muscle, every nerve, every cell in my body pushing against whatever was holding me down. I screamed inside my own head. I begged. I threatened. I told it to take me instead. I told it whatever space it wanted inside my mind it could have. All of it. Every room. Every corner. Just not her. The hand stopped. The fingers paused, suspended an inch from Chloe's skin. The shape turned toward me, slowly. And for the first time, I saw its face. It didn't have eyes. It didn't have a mouth. It didn't have features in any human sense. What it had were openings. Small round openings arranged across the surface of its face in no pattern I could recognize. Dozens of them. Each one the exact size and shape of the marks on my neck. The exact size and shape of the circles on my kitchen table. The humming came from those openings. All of them. Each one producing a slightly different tone, layered together into that single unwavering sound that I'd been hearing for months. The sound I'd been feeling in my bones and my teeth and the back of my skull. The shape looked at me, and I use the word looked, loosely, because I don't know how something with no eyes can look at you, but it did. And the humming shifted. It changed. The tone dropped lower, then cycled up, then dropped again, and I understood. Not the words. There were no words, but the meaning, the intent, what it wanted, what it had always wanted. It was making room. That's what the marks were. That's what the pressure was. That's what the warmth and the opening in my mind had been. It was making room for itself inside a person, clearing space, preparing a place to live. Paul Ash hadn't died of cardiac arrest. Paul Ash had been emptied. The space inside his mind had been hollowed out until there was nothing left to keep his body running. And now it was here, in a hotel room in Gainesville, 63 miles from the townhouse, and it had followed me because it wasn't attached to the house. It was attached to me. It had started the process, and it intended to finish it. Unless it found somewhere easier, unless it found someone younger, someone whose mind had more room to begin with. someone who was asleep and unguarded and lying 6 feet away from it with her neck exposed. I said no, not out loud. I couldn't speak. I was still paralyzed. But I said it in my head with everything I had. I said no. I said you do not touch her. I said I will burn this body to the ground before I let you use it to reach her. And then I did something I don't understand and can't explain. I moved. Not my body. My body was still locked. But something inside me moved. Toward the shape. Into the humming. Into the sound itself. I pushed into it and I felt it resist and I pushed harder. The humming faltered. The tone broke, just for a second, and in that second I felt the shape pull back. It wasn't expecting resistance. Not from inside the process. Not from someone it had already begun to hollow out. I pushed again, harder. The humming broke into fragments. Shattered, overlapping tones that clashed against each other and lost their coherence. I could feel the shape losing its grip, not on me, but on the space it had carved inside my mind. The room it had made was collapsing, closing. The walls it had carefully, patiently dissolved were rebuilding, and I was building them. And it couldn't stop me because it was inside me, and I was bigger. I was louder, I was the host, and it was the guest, and I was telling it to get out. The shape shattered. There's no other way to describe it. It came apart, not into pieces, into nothing. The humming stopped. The cold stopped. The pressure lifted. My body unlocked. I sat up. I was drenched in sweat. My nose was bleeding. My ears were ringing. I could taste metal. Chloe was still asleep. I checked her neck. No mark. No redness. Nothing. I picked her up, manatee and all, and held her against my chest and sat on the floor between the two beds and held her for the rest of the night. She didn't wake up. She slept through the whole thing. This morning, I checked the camera on the desk. The footage showed me lying on the bed. At 3:08 a.m., I rolled onto my back. My arms went to my sides. I lay still for 9 minutes. Then at 3:17, something happened that wasn't on any previous recording. My back arched. My entire body lifted off the mattress except for my shoulders and my heels, bent upward at an angle that should have been painful. I held that position for 4 seconds. Then I collapsed back down and rolled onto my side and didn't move again. There was nothing else in the room. No shape, no figure. Nothing between the beds. Nothing near Chloe. The camera recorded an empty room and a woman arching off the bed in the middle of the night for no visible reason. But my nose bled. The blood is on the pillow. I can see it. I can touch it. It's real. And there's one more thing. After I reviewed the footage this morning, I checked the kitchen table back at the townhouse. I asked Derek to go check it for me. I told him to look at the surface, near the middle, and count the circles. He called me back an hour ago. He said he found the circles. He counted them. 13. There had been 12 when I left. The 13th one is new. And I wasn't in the townhouse when it appeared. I was 63 miles away, in a hotel room, fighting for my daughter's life. Which means one of two things. Either the thing that's been hollowing me out found a way to mark the table without using my body, or someone else was in my house last night. Someone whose hands it could borrow, someone new. I don't know which answer is worse. I'm sitting in this hotel room and Chloe is asleep and the camera is recording, and I don't know what to do next. I don't know if what I did last night actually worked, or if the shape is gone, or just regrouping. I don't know if the space inside my mind is really closed, or if it's just waiting to be reopened. I don't know if I won, or if I just delayed what's coming. But I know this. It didn't touch her. It reached for her, and it stopped. I stopped it. With nothing but whatever is left inside me after 2 months of being carved apart from the inside. That has to count for something. I'm going to stay awake tonight. I'm going to watch Chloe sleep, and I'm going to keep the camera running, and I'm going to sit in this chair, and I am not going to close my eyes. Tomorrow, I'm going to find someone who knows what this is. Not a sleep doctor, not a neurologist. Someone who understands what happens when something decides it wants to live inside you, and you have to convince it that the rent is too high. I'll find someone. I'll figure it out. I have to, because she's 7 years old and she sleeps with a stuffed manatee, and she trusts me to keep her safe, and I will. whatever it costs.